Welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. This is our second show. Thank you to so many people who reached out to tell us how much they enjoyed the first show. We do have, let me put my contact information up. We do have a way to reach us here. You can email me and you can also text me. You'll see the number at the bottom of the corner as well. Yesterday we received a bunch of great texts, and I really appreciate that. We're going to get to those a little bit later on. On the program this morning, we're going to have Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard. He'll be in to join us, and you can send questions in. That'll be around 7:20, 7:25. We will be talking with him, so send those questions in ahead of time. Give me a little time to work on them and add them to our list of questions we'll be asking the sheriff. Yesterday on the program, we had the mayor, Bill Bolin. I want to thank him. I ran out of time towards the end of the program to thank everybody. I want to thank everybody here at Big Fox. I want to thank all of you that watched the first show. Well, this is our second show, and I think we're going to do just as good as we did yesterday, if not better, if that's possible. So we're going to get to a lot of the news stories of the day. Yesterday, we didn't have quite enough time to get to too many stories. I heard from some of you about the article from the New York Post that I highlighted, which was, could former governor, disgraced Governor Andrew Cuomo, be running against Senator Gillibrand? That's the big question from yesterday. We'll have a few questions today that I think will pique your interest. Let's go to a couple of quick stories. The first one, let's see here. I'm going to get to the right screen so you can see exactly what I am watching. There we go. Sad note. I don't want to start the program with a sad note, but a Yankee legend, Joe Pepitone, has passed away at the age of 82. Kind of a colorful character. I saw that in the news yesterday. We'll try to bring you some of those stories like these that maybe you don't see everywhere. And I'm not going to always try to start the program on a downer note, but I thought this was, I know we got a lot of Yankee fans in our area. So Joe Pepitone passing away at the age of 82. He played with the Yankees between 1962 and 1969. Some other stories we're going to get to later on, more on the political front. We will be talking about the bank runs, Silicon Valley, what that means for us, not just investors in the bank. We also have an interesting story, I think, that I don't know, if you follow New York politics, a few years back, Ed Cox was the state GOP chairman. Nick Langworthy, our current congressman, actually took over that job from Ed Cox, and now that Nick Langworthy is our congressman, it has gone back to Ed Cox, which is an interesting a move. We're going to get to that a little bit later on, hopefully, if we have time. Also, we're going to talk a little bit. Again, I don't want to highlight too many in case we don't have time, because we're going to talk to the sheriff, and we have a lot of questions for the sheriff, and we do appreciate him being on the program this morning. So we're coming up on a break, so I'm not going to highlight too much more, but when we get back, I think we're going to jump right in with the bank issue. Again, thank you to everybody that reached out. Please contact us at the information there on your screen, and we'll read a couple text messages and a few emails later on in the program. So right now, why don't we take that short break, and then we'll be back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, live from the Hesselson studio on beautiful Market Street in Corning. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. As I mentioned, the sheriff's going to come up in just a little bit, Sheriff Jim Allard from Steuben County. You can contact me there with all that information. If you have any questions for the sheriff. Coming up later on in the week, tomorrow, former Congressman Joe Sempolinski will join us. He's now the Steuben County GOP chairman, so we'll ask him some questions about petition season and what you should know if you want to run for office. And I highly recommend it. It's an amazing experience. And then on Thursday, we're going to talk to Chemung County Sheriff Bill Schramm, and then on Friday, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. We may have some other interviews sprinkled in as well. You just have to tune in. You never know what to expect here on Frankly Speaking every weekday morning starting at 7 a.m. So let's go to probably the biggest story that we've been seeing, and that is the SVB run, the bailout, if you will. Now, the president and our Governor Hochul, is saying that it's not a bailout. And technically, as you see from this article from the New York Post, and we have a few articles that we're going to get to on this issue, but this opinion piece suggests it's true that Silicon Valley Bank didn't get a bailout, but Silicon Valley itself absolutely did. And this is what it boils down to. Now, it's one of those very fascinating issues where you have both conservatives and the far left upset at what has happened here. The normal rules, as it states, the first $250,000 are insured by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC. You've heard of it on commercials before, I'm sure. After that, the customer is liable for loss. Well, we know that many people in the Silicon Valley Bank had a lot more than $250,000 in the bank. But out of nowhere, the rules changed in this scenario with FDIC. Silicon Valley wanted a different set of rules for itself. So Sunday, venture capitalists and startup executives, they worked overtime to push for what is essentially a government bailout. Again, it's one of those tricky Washington things where they don't want you to use the bailout word, right? So it worked. Yellen, Treasury Secretary Yellen, announced Sunday night that tech companies that deposited funds to SVB, even those parked with way too much money in it, would get a bailout. Now, according to this piece from the New York Post, they call it crony capitalism. What's more, 98% of political donations, think about this, 98% of political donations from these bailed out firms went to Democrats. So there's some questions of impropriety there of why was it so important to bail out and give essentially all their money back, not just the $250,000 guaranteed by the FDIC. So now we go to our next article here, and remember, I'm working. I'm going for this new technology. I'm working on it, and I think we're doing a pretty good job. So Biden's rescue of pro-Democrats is what, again, this is from the New York Post. This is Linda Moynihan and Ariel Zilber saying that Biden's rescue of pro-Democrats is being slammed, and they're looking after their own. It's a sort of an interesting piece here. Again, highlighting the fact that 98% of all political contributions from people who worked at internet companies went to Democrats in 2020. That's according to the Center for Responsive Politics. Listen to this number. According to Government Predict, they said that over $200 million from Silicon Valley went specifically to Democrats. So tech insiders are saying this is a bailout, and the account holders they bailed out are Democrats. So is it a politically motivated bailout? Is it to scare away future runs on banks? I guess I'll let you be the judge. I know I have my personal opinion on that, and it seems to me to be a bailout for some of the people that helped President Biden and his party out the most. Now, Biden, again, and I don't want to keep just going to the New York Post, but they've been doing some amazing coverage on this. Biden forced to bail out banking system, and his donors he endangered, putting the blame or the onus on the president as well for some of the rules. Now, I think it's interesting over the weekend, as this was all going on, and I know a lot of people were watching it closely, the president found the time, if you will, to highlight the American Rescue Plan, which was a year old. He sent more than 10 tweets, but not focused on what was becoming a major issue with the banking system. So now I have to take a short break. We're going to talk more about this. I know we're going to run a little late, I could tell already, but these are the important issues of the day, the things that affect you. How does this directly affect you? Well, we're going to tell you about that when we come back, so I hope that you'll stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street, and we'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Again, there's our contact information. Do not forget that the sheriff, Steuben County Sheriff Jim Aller, is going to be on in just a few moments. So if you have any last-minute questions, and again, thank you to everybody who reached out. It seems like there's some excitement, some buzz in the air about Frankly Speaking. So I'm very glad that you're starting your morning off with us. So we were talking about the bailout, whether you want to call it that or not, however you want to word that. What I found interesting before we move on to how this affects you locally, a lot of people are blaming this on the president because we dumped trillions into an economy that was already running hot, and we've got a scenario where it's just causing so much inflation. Look at this. We've got the sheriff in. There we go. Opening this up live on the air. Now, before you say anything, you're live on the air, okay? Okay. We're going to be talking to the sheriff in just a moment, but we're talking about Silicon Valley Bank bailout. Basically, just to boil it all down, what we're talking about is no matter what banking system you use, you're going to be shelling out more money because the banks have to pay the FDIC for how much more they had to give this bank. So it's going to eventually come out of your pocket, and that's what we're looking there at the New York Post article on the screen. But a few last things on this at the local level before we go to break, and if I could just click on that there. The governor, Governor Hochul, says the rescue of the Signature Bank is not a bailout, and I know everybody's been worried about this because they said, where did Governor Cuomo have all of his campaign money? Don't worry, he had a lot of money in Signature Bank, but he doesn't have to worry about losing any of that campaign money, so he's still good if he decides to run against Kirsten Gillibrand, as being suggested in the news. So we're going to take another break because I want to talk to the sheriff and get right to it. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on WYDC TV Big Fox and beautiful Corning on Market Street. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, live from the Hesselson studio here at WYDC TV Big Fox. And joining me in the studio for our M.A. Neal Financial Services interview, we have Steuben County Sheriff Jim Aller. Good morning.
Morning, Frank.
What do you think about the TV gig?
This is pretty cool.
Yeah, isn't it? It's nice. Look at all these lights, fancy lights. It's show business.
I just got to take a minute to say how happy I am that you're back on the air.
Thank you.
Reporting the local news. There's such a lack of in-depth local reporting right now that
Really?
It's very important that you're on the air. So
And
thanks. I'm glad you're doing this, and thanks to Big Fox for
Of course.
having you.
I cannot thank them enough. And I'm glad that, like you, tomorrow we have Joe Sempolinski, which that's going to be fun, my former boss. I told him I'm not taking it easy, though. I told him I'm not taking it
Not
easy.
pulling any punches.
No. We're going behind the curtain. So we're going to talk to him. And, we have the assemblyman. I don't think you get this information anywhere else. Whether it's campaign season, people making announcements. And one of the things, I haven't seen this highlighted, but I think this is really great what you're doing, because one thing, as long as you've been sheriff, I think you've always been focused, number one, on community outreach.
Yes.
I think that goes without saying. And you have a new, I think it's new, it's Coffee with the Chief and Sheriff. Tell us about that.
So we started doing this a couple years ago with up in the Hornell, Canisteo, North Hornell area. We've done it in Hammondsport, but we've never done it here in Corning. And in talking with Chief Spalding, I said, I think this would be a good time. And she said, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Wegmans was gracious enough to host us. So we'll be there on Friday.
This Friday?
Yes, this Friday from 8 to 10. Stop in, say hi. If you've got information you want to give us, that's great. If you have questions, we're there for that too. Or if you just want to hang out, we'll be there.
8 to 10, you're going to be drinking a lot of coffee.
I usually do.
So, nothing new. So what should people know? That it's pretty informal then, if they want to attend?
Very informal. Very informal, yeah. It's a way for the community just to pop in and say, hey, we like what you're doing, or hey, I got this problem in my neighborhood.
Yeah. And when you've had these in the past, is it a mixed bag? Is it positive and negative?
It is. It is. It's a lot of folks that are there to show support, but also a lot of folks that don't feel comfortable calling 911 or don't feel comfortable contacting you when you're in the office. So it works out really well both ways.
And this is kind of goes back because you had the community forums. Again, I don't want to keep saying this, but you've always been very proactive in hearing what the residents, because that's really what you want to focus on, right? What their concerns are.
Yeah. So, at the sheriff's office, we know we're public servants. We're very, very in tune with that. So how can we serve you if we don't know what you need?
And when you talk to people, whether it's at these meetings or just in general when you're on the street, what are the major concerns?
So obviously bail reform is a big issue and continues to be a big issue. I know.
Nothing's being done about it, and everybody complains about it.
Yes. That in obviously the lack of police that are available is a big issue right now. Recruiting in all law enforcement areas has taken a big hit due to the vilification of policing that happens not only in Albany but also through the major media outfits.
Well, you have the media and so many attacking police, but also when you have bail reform, it's got to, and I'm sure you can speak to it, it's got to be so frustrating when you do what you know is right and then they're back on the street before you have the ink dry on the paperwork. Well,
in just, a couple, we've done 2 search warrants here recently, one with City PD, one with Painted Post PD, B felony level drug arrests with search warrants, weapons taken, and they're arraigned and released that same day.
It's unbelievable.
How are you going to curtail the illegal narcotics operations in your community, which causes blight when that's the case.
And that's affecting all of our communities.
Correct.
I mean, we have a big range. We're going to be talking to the Chemung County Sheriff, Bill Schramm, on Thursday. But, I mean, everywhere you go, this is a major topic with people on the street.
Yes.
And it seems like politicians, not all politicians, but some politicians are just turning a blind eye.
Well, it's the super progressive end of the ruling party in Albany that have made these rules, and honestly, I see every message that the governor sends out. She's trying to roll back a little bit, but her own party's not allowing it to happen. So
No, they're fighting it. But I don't. I guess to me, I don't understand the end game. What's the upside to it other than to look caring? But I don't know how that's caring.
well, it's all about garnering votes. I think downstate. I think that's the whole purpose of in garnering young votes. I think is
that makes sense.
is part of it also.
What do you think we can do to kind of speak out about this? Because as I said, people stop me on the street to talk about it, and I know you and I have been talking about it for 5 years, if not longer.
Since before it became enacted. I think the thing is to keep the pressure up on Albany to change it. That's got to be loud and clear. When they did the last poll, public safety and crime was one of the number one issues, and I think you saw that reflected in some recent comments by the governor. So when you look at attacking the violence that occurs, but then there's no consequence for the violence that occurs, you're kind of going at it with one hand tied behind your back.
And I think that's one of the reasons why then Congressman Lee Zeldin did so well in the governor's race. I mean, so close. But I know. But I do think, I mean, poll after poll shows that people are very concerned about their safety, their family safety, and it really boils back down to bail reform.
It does.
Yeah.
It absolutely does.
And I know for a long time we've talked about this as well, and you guys have done a great job in the sheriff's office, but the opioid epidemic and the drug issues in our area, since I haven't talked to you in a while, are there any updates on that? Is it getting any better? Is it getting worse?
I don't know that it's getting better. We see sporadic bunches of overdoses now. It seems like whenever there's a new pill press operation, and they're selling what looks like Xanax as fentanyl, you see a whole rash of overdoses. Wow. We continue to see it. Some things that have changed in the jail now. We have it's called a medically assisted treatment program that we were required to by the state, but we started before that, so that we can work with our treatment providers to try and get folks into recovery before they leave. And then we have a warm handoff. We have a group that meets, and it's a warm handoff so that they can continue recovery. That's the hopes.
Great.
So we're doing that, and we work with the Prevention Coalition and the Opioid Committee to further that. Anything that we can do to help. I get it. I've said to you, again, I've been saying this for years, that addiction is our number one public safety crisis in Steuben County. I feel it is. And anything that we can do that helps on that end, that's what we're all in for.
It's sad to me. I mean, it's a great initiative where there's so much training now to deal with people that are ODing. But isn't it sad that we're training pretty much anybody on the street? You can get the Narcan. Is that what it is? You can get Narcan as easy as when we used to have masks. Everybody got a mask at the door. That's very telling.
They're being put up on walls of public buildings. So you can just grab and go if you need to. We're giving it to the folks that are in our treatment. When they leave, they take Narcan with them, just in case they have a lapse. So,
I mean, I guess thank God for Narcan, but it's sad that we have to.
But again, it's like everything else. The taxpayers are paying.
No, that's true too.
It's not free.
Yeah, right. Nothing's free. I've learned that a few times. But so you guys are combating this, but what can we do other than, I guess, learn how to use Narcan if we see something?
Well, you can do that, and again, that's part of. So we push Stop the Bleed and all these other programs so that people know what to do for catastrophic injuries. I think Narcan is just part of that. When you stop breathing, that's pretty catastrophic.
Yes.
And so we push that with the Stop the Bleed and try to get as many folks certified as we can, and we have tons of partners in that. So
When we have this scourge of fentanyl, do the people? I mean, maybe this is an ignorant question. When someone overdoses on it, does it seem because they knew they were taking fentanyl, or is it one of those scenarios where fentanyl was mixed in with something else?
typically it's mixed in
Oh,
with
okay.
something else. Sometimes they know. Most times I don't think they do.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
And so is that that's got to be a major concern. Then it's got to
Mhm.
scare people. Well,
Well, it's a major concern for us in collecting evidence too.
yeah. Oh, I'm sure. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, I have a lot more questions for you if you can stay through the break. Is that
Sure.
okay? All
Yeah.
right. We'll be right back. This is the M.A. Neal Financial Services interview. And we're in the Hesselson studio right here at WYDC TV. Big Fox. Stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. We're being joined by the Sheriff, Jim Allard. Thanks again for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I mean, you agreed to do this sight unseen.
Yes.
So,
Again,
so thanks for your trust.
well, it's not only that, but the quality of news that you've delivered over the years. I think everybody trusts you.
Wow, jeez. Well, thank you.
At least they should.
They should. Well, thank you.
And
Well,
you
we
have that from me.
We've talked about so much this morning. I don't want to talk all doom and gloom, but I mean, let's face it. This is the stuff that's affecting, going back to what you're saying, the community. And I know when these first started popping up, people didn't know what to think. How has the sheriff's office dealt with, I guess they're called sticker stores, or, I mean, basically legalization of marijuana and being sold in these stores? Have you had issues with it? Why are some allowed to operate, some are? I mean, I think it's confusing to most people.
It is very confusing. I think intentionally when all of the slate of cannabis laws were passed, forever in the penal law, if I give you, and even today, if I give you heroin,
Mhm.
if I just hand it to you, that's a sale.
Okay, yeah.
Makes sense?
Mhm.
Marijuana has always been, if I give it to you, it's a sale. When they redid the cannabis laws, they changed that section and defined a sale only if money transfers for the purpose of a sale, that handing it, gifting it, is not illegal.
Okay.
That's the only time in the penal law that is so,
Yeah.
and it's in that new slate of cannabis laws. So I feel that it was an intentional change.
Mhm.
Obviously, it went through committee and all of those other things,
Mhm.
and because of that, that gave birth to the sticker stores.
I see.
So I buy a 15-cent sticker from you for $25, and I get 2 joints in return,
Gotcha.
or gummies, or whatever. Some of the issues we have seen with these stores is the edibles look exactly like candy.
I've seen that before.
Exactly.
Even the packaging.
The packaging looks like candy.
Mhm.
And we've already had cases where small children have taken them out of mom's purse
Sure.
and then ended up in the hospital. So that's one issue. But with the cannabis, you're supposed to contact the cannabis board
Mhm.
for direction and help, and send a letter to
Okay.
let them know that someone is selling unlawfully, and they're gonna, it usually takes a month to get a response from the cannabis board when you call,
Okay.
and there is no enforcement arm of the cannabis board. So there's no enforcement of these places.
Okay.
Where places have been successful with them is through local codes.
Oh, okay.
Village of Bath had a local law that said you can't operate, because it's still an unlawful sale of
Right.
marijuana.
Right.
You can't operate any business that creates where you're breaking the law, basically. So they've been able to shut down their sticker stores
Oh, okay.
using that through code enforcement, and other places have done the same. It's when you get out in places that don't have active code enforcement or don't have code enforcement officers that can actually charge things, they go pretty much unchecked.
Okay.
And
And well, I was going to say, I was surprised by so many of the areas that accepted it, because didn't the actual town boards or city councils have to accept it? But the law was so up in the air. We didn't have any real information. Why not wait until New York
Right.
kind of really codifies everything and makes it
So-
more understandable?
Yeah, so Massachusetts did it the right way.
Mhm.
They did all their codification, they did all of their meetings, they determined, and then they rolled out and changed the law.
Oh, okay.
We did the opposite.
What else is new?
We changed the law and then
Yep.
said, oh, I guess we ought to figure that out.
Some unintended consequences. right?
Yeah. So none of the marijuana sales currently in this area are legal.
Okay.
None of them.
Okay.
And the only way that they are legal is if you have a permit from the state of New York to sell.
Oh, yeah.
Last I knew, there was only 1 or 2 of those in the entire state.
Right.
And
And that's been slow rollout too.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, again, they underfunded the Cannabis Management Board. It doesn't have enough people, doesn't have enough oversight, and they have no direction. So makes for a perfect storm.
I remember when this first came up and talking to you, and we thought, well, you may have with this legalization, you may see someone smoking like a joint on Market Street. Boy, it's more than cigarettes. You see more people
Yes.
smoke. So how do you deal with that in the sheriff's office? Because you've got to assume at some point, some of these people anyway, unfortunately, are getting in vehicles, right?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And we've seen an increase in our DWAI arrests. We have a drug recognition expert that's their job is to do DWI and DWAI enforcement, and they're out, doing that. But we see a lot of mixing, and we see a lot of misinformation.
Sure.
I was talking to a young man just the other day that was arrested for DWAI. He was 20 years old, had marijuana with him because he thought it was legal.
Oh,
Well, not if you're under 21.
Oh, sure.
You can't possess it at all.
Yeah.
So, and he was telling me all the things that went wrong for him
Yeah.
that ended up in an arrest, and there's just a lot of misinformation out there.
And that's the case when the government doesn't really give us any direction of what was going to happen.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of the wild, wild west right now with these places.
It is, and I guess the thing that's one of the most troubling things for me is we're spending so much money as a state to combat cigarette smoking.
Right.
I mean, you can't get through a meal
Right.
without seeing an advertisement about how dangerous cigarette
And it's
smoking
always
is.
during dinner.
But then we're going to legalize marijuana, knowing that it has almost the same carcinogenic effects that cigarette smoking
Right.
has, and there's nothing on that.
No, I think about, because I remember when Ithaca, and I don't know the rules on this, but I know that Ithaca had banned smoking cigarettes in the commons.
Yes, in a public place.
But
yeah.
I'm sure you could probably, it's Ithaca. I would think you could have a joint, right? I don't know
I
how that
would-
works.
I
but
would
that,
assume,
It's
yeah.
it's weird, the dynamic of that, where, again, I wouldn't feel comfortable having like a cigar in Centerway, because I know there's families and things like
Right.
that want to have lunch in the summer and like that. But yet, every time you walk by,
You smell it.
You smell it.
Yeah.
Every day smells like Woodstock around here
Yeah,
anymore.
I know, and that's
Do you think that's led to other issues, or is it too early to tell? Because we talked earlier about, I'm not comparing in any way marijuana to fentanyl, but I mean, we've talked about the addiction problem in our area. Do you think it's
Right.
led to other issues?
absolutely the marijuana that's being sold now is so much more powerful
I've read
than what was in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
And make no mistake, this is, you hear about big tobacco, this is big marijuana pushing this. And they're going to make sure that just as big tobacco did, this is going to be the most addictive marijuana you can get.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good business.
Yeah. Right.
And millions have been spent lobbying to get this passed and get this in New York. They're going to want to recoup that money through customer base.
It's just amazing. Maybe 10 years ago, there was no legalized gambling. There was
know.
no legalized marijuana. It's like, what happened?
Well,
You blink, it goes so quick.
It's in committee at the, I think it's in the Assembly, but a law to legalize prostitution. That's in Albany right now, and they're talking about it.
I used to talk about the slippery slope, and everybody would kind of laugh or say that's cliche. Who would have thought?
Well,
in
I
this
think
short
they're
time?
looking at upstate as being their vacation land,
Yeah.
where they
Yeah.
can do whatever they want. Will be their Cuba.
Yeah, it must be, because they really want revenue. We need the revenue because everybody's leaving the state.
Yeah,
I'm getting on
yeah.
a rant here. I better get away.
Yeah.
We'll move on. But we also talked a little bit early on in the beginning of the segment about retention and having trouble. How has it affected the Steuben County Sheriff's Office?
So in the corrections part of our operation, it's really affected it. We haven't been able to attract people to even take tests
Oh, okay.
to become full-time correction
Wow.
officers. It's a thankless job, and the folks that do it, my hat's off to them
Right.
because they're such professionals, and it's not an easy job whatsoever. But we're down, I think, 14 full-time positions right now
Oh, wow.
in the jail.
How do
And
you handle that?
so
lot of overtime?
There's a lot of overtime, and we used to house in. So here's the economic effect. We used to house in around 20 federal inmates every day, and that worked out to about 1.4 million a year
Okay.
into the county. We had to send them all back. We don't have enough people to house them.
Okay.
So that revenue is no longer coming in. And, we've closed pods, shrunk down the number of housing units that we have open so that we can cover with what we have with overtime.
Okay.
But it wears them out.
Well,
Terrible.
it seems dangerous for everybody.
It is. It is.
What a shame. But I don't know. There's only so much PR you can do.
Yeah.
Right?
I advertise every time there's a test out. I do a big social media push, and we try to. Yates County did an open house to try and get.
Yeah.
And it didn't develop into much of anything. So.
Well, we'll give it a shot here. If they
Yeah.
want, they can contact your
we
office.
have full-time job openings right now as a corrections
Should've had
officer
Help
in the
wanted
Cement
sign
County
over.
Jail.
Help wanted
Come
sign
join
over.
the team. Yeah.
Yeah, please do. I know this has always been something I've asked you, and we get emails all the time, and especially in the past. And now there's changes. We've talked about the Second Amendment for many years.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the pistol permit process, because I know we've seen a lot of changes.
Right, and to my best understanding, currently we're back to where we started
Oh.
last September.
Okay.
Because there was the stay out of
Mhm.
federal court up in Syracuse,
Right.
and then a block to that stay, and then a second ruling, and then a stay to that ruling. And I feel like a weatherman.
I know. I'm
The
going.
clouds are
What
coming
is it?
And so until that 3-judge panel meets and decides,
Right.
we're right back at the start
Okay.
where we were with the sensitive locations
Mhm.
and all of that. So as far as the pistol permit processing goes, the processing is still very similar. The big difference is the 16-hour training.
Okay.
So what we've done is we teach the first 8 hours of it, which is all law,
Okay.
de-escalation, effects of mental illness on gun ownership, and then we partnered with the NRA and some of our other local for-pay providers to do the second half.
Oh, okay.
So it works out. It's still less than if you paid for the whole thing for our residents, but it doesn't put the whole onus on us to do the heavy lifting
That's a lot of
with
time.
limited folks. Yeah. So that's worked out pretty well. You have to supply your social media
That's
as
so
part
weird.
of the investigation.
So you're going through people's Facebook? Do you have to do that?
No, they have to supply it, and the deputy that interviews you will see if they can see anything, and that's it.
Okay.
You still have to have an in-person interview with the deputy.
Okay.
You still have to do your fingerprints for the criminal history. The big difference is if you have a DWI or a menacing, and there's a third one within 5 years, it's an automatic no.
Okay.
But we processed, I think it was over 800 pistol permit applications last year.
Wow.
Probably 400 came in July and August before the September change.
Yeah.
And we're all the way through all of those, and we're doing the new ones now.
Okay.
But it's a little bit different application, but it's not that different from what we were already doing. Just a few additions.
And just a longer process for people that want to get the
It
permit.
is.
Okay.
It is. Yeah.
Now, we're just about out of time. I'm actually running late, but I had to ask you about this because we want to end on a positive note. Tell us about the new addition to the sheriff's office.
Ronnie is here. So Sean Schott, Sergeant Schott, he was one of the original canines in our current with Damon. Damon was 11 years old or 12 years old and developed some nerve issues, and he passed. And we made Sean wait and go through a grieving time
I'm sure.
before we got a new one,
Yeah.
because that was the most important person in his life.
Oh, of course.
And we ended up we had some donors that helped us out, and again, at no cost to the county, we got a new shepherd. His name is Ronnie. Ronnie Bates was a longtime deputy and sergeant for the sheriff's office. He worked at Corning Region a lot. RB, we used to call him. And Sean wanted to name this new canine after Ronnie in the honor of Ronnie.
Oh, that's nice.
And he's already in training. He's here and he's in training.
Everybody loves him, I'm sure.
He is. He's a gorgeous dog.
Oh, is he?
He is.
We'll bring pictures next time.
Okay.
And we're on TV now.
Well,
you can do
now
that.
you're on TV. I can have Sean stop in.
Oh,
with him.
let's do it. Well, thanks again so much for being on. I can't
Yep.
believe that went quick, but thank you for being on. Let's talk again soon, okay?
Absolutely, anytime.
All right. This interview was brought to you by M.A. Neal Financial Services. Stay with us. We'll be right back with WYDC TV, Big Fox, and Frankly Speaking. Oh, yeah, just push the button. I got gossiping with the sheriff here. Let's see you. Thanks. Thank you to Sheriff for being on the program. Welcome back to the Hesselson studio. We want to thank M.A. Neal Financial Services for bringing us that interview. Tomorrow on the program, because as you can guess, I'm already running late, so we're going to take a break here in just a little bit. But just to highlight a few things, let's go to our main page there. You can always text or call, and thank you to everyone who's been doing that. You can leave a voicemail or you can text. You can email me at frank@wydctv.com. Tomorrow on the program, we're going to have Steuben County GOP Chairman and former Congressman Joe Sempolinski. He'll be our guest right around the same time, 7:20, 7:30. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun to talk with him. In full disclosure, he's my former boss, so we'll even have extra amount of fun because of that. We are in the works. We have a couple other non-local interviews. I'll highlight those as soon as they are set in stone. But on Thursday, we're going to talk to Chemung County Sheriff Bill Schramm, who I'm sure is dealing with many of the same issues that I don't want to put words in his mouth, but dealing with many of the same issues that Sheriff Allard is dealing with. And then on Friday, we're going to talk to Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. I see that the Assembly was not called back because of the potential storm, so hopefully we can spend some time with him and find out exactly what to expect from Albany. So as I said, we have to take a short break, so please stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, live from the Hesselson studio on beautiful Market Street. Oh, one quick thing. I didn't do it yet. We did get one official wave for the first time. There we go. We added it. All right, now we'll go back to this commercial break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and thank you again to Sheriff Jim Allard for being our guest on the program. I thought, since we ran a little late yesterday, I thought it'd be kind of fun to go through some of the texts and emails. We'll just read one of each before we go to a break and then wrap up our stories on the day. A couple questions I want to ask you right at the end from the news. But first, we'll start with email. Tony sent in a very nice, a good friend of the former Frankly Speaking program. Tony said, "Congratulations, I'm glad to see you on the air. Your coverage of issues important to the local community was greatly missed." Well, I really appreciate that, Tony. It's good to hear from you. I hope we can have you on the program very soon. And as always, you could email me. It's frank@wydctv.com. I'd love to get your take on the brand new, all new, Frankly Speaking. This is only our second show, and I think they're going great so far. Then we'll go to text. Marty wrote, "Good morning, Frankly Speaking." That is apparently my nickname. I hear it a lot. "Reaching out to say thank you for what sounds like a good new program. Looking forward to finding out more about our local community." Well, thank you, Marty. And this is the place to go. If you have any questions, I mentioned this just a little bit yesterday, touched on it. If you have maybe a local issue that's concerning you, you're saying, wow, I'm having trouble with, I don't want to say neighbor, trouble with, like I said yesterday, infrastructure, or something's going on in your community that affects you, affects your neighbors, contact me. I can't guarantee we'll always be able to get an interview with someone that could maybe help that problem or at least explain the problem, but I'll give it a shot. I can tell you that. And if you are running for office, because I know this is petition season, if you are running, get a hold of me so we can get something in the books early and get you on the program and get you scheduled. I love having candidates on. I love having the politicians, and that's why we're so happy to have, well, in this case, the sheriff today, yesterday, the mayor of Corning, Bill Bolin, and as I said, tomorrow, Joe Sempolinski, who is the Steuben County GOP chairman. He'll fill us in on the petition process and what you need to know if you want to become active in local politics at the Republican level. And again, we'll have guests from all different political stripes. So, as was the case yesterday, running just a little bit late towards the end of the program because you don't want to cut the sheriff short because he gave us a great interview and we had so much to learn. So stay with us. We're going to take another short break. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio on beautiful Market Street in Corning. Stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. Thanks again for joining us. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio on Market Street. One story I want to mention before we wrap it up. I said I have one story and then we're going to get to a question and you can answer that question via text. You see the number on the bottom of the screen, or you can always email me at frank@WYDC TV Big Fox. All right, we go back to the browser. This is a story that I touched on really quickly at the beginning of the program. Ed Cox will return as the New York Republican chairman. That happened yesterday. A little surprised there. I wasn't sure that there were some other names being thrown around. I'll put it that way. I'm surprised that maybe it's just so he can hit the ground running because he did it for so long before he's going to replace our now Congressman, Nick Langworthy. Langworthy was elected to Congress back in November, and I want to say he's been the chairman for a couple of years. So Ed Cox returns. There was some rumblings for a while that maybe Lee Zeldin would do it. We talked with the sheriff earlier, but Lee Zeldin doing a wonderful job running for governor. Of course, unfortunately, he did not win, but one of the things that was amazing about what he accomplished was how many, because of his campaigning, how many congressional seats it actually swung in Republican favor in New York. So there's I think a bright future for Lee Zeldin. Now here's the big question of the day before we get ready to go. And you can answer this via text or you can email me. Let me go right to it. If Biden doesn't run, would Bernie be the best alternative? Bernie, who 81 years old, boy, that's going to be an interesting. We know that he ran twice already. According to a new Reuters poll taken last month, 81-year-old Sanders is running second for the 2024 presidential nomination with 13% support. He is ahead of Vice President Harris at 12%. Well, that number's a little higher than what I thought. And Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg at 10%. So there's your question of the day. Let me know. Text, do you think that if Biden decides not to run, now there's nothing that says he can't run, but if Biden decides not to run, will it be Bernie? There's your question of the day here on Frankly Speaking. All right, we are out of time. Thank you to the sheriff, Jim Allard, for being on the program this morning. Again, just to highlight, tomorrow, former congressman and now current Steuben County GOP chairman Joe Sempolinski will be our guest right around 7:30. We've got a lot of questions for him. Again, I want to thank everybody who's been reaching out and all the positive reviews and whatever criticism we've received. We haven't received any yet, but I'm sure we will. Thank you to everybody who's reached out and said such kind words. To have Frankly Speaking back on the air, we're proud of it. We're proud of yesterday's performance. We're proud of today's performance until I just made that gaffe. So we're really happy that you've joined us. So again, you can always contact me at that phone number there, Frank at WYDC TV Big Fox. That's Frank at WYDC TV Big Fox. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day, and I hope to talk to you tomorrow on Frankly Speaking.